We're here with Gale Boyd, and she's one of our favorite people. And by our, I mean me, because Kwiku and Justin aren't super familiar with Gale yet.
I know a few things about Gale, and I'm very impressed.
I've been working with Gale for a little while, and she's awesome. And so we brought her on the show because she, matter of fact, has quite the story to tell about her conversion to the church.
So, Gale, you were Jewish. Were you Orthodox Jewish? Like what were you before you were LDS?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you how I'm Jewish first.
Okay.
My mother's family were German Jews, and they arrived in the United States in the mid-1800s.
Oh, wow.
And some of them went to the South and ended up fighting with the Confederacy in the Civil War, speaking only Yiddish. But my ancestors from that German Jewish side on my mother's side who stayed in Germany perished in the Holocaust. They're not directly in my line. They're our cousins and our uncles and aunts and people like that. So when I do my genealogy, I don't do the Holocaust victims. I just do the ones who have died of natural causes. That's the rules of the church. My mother's family, her father was a Blumenthal. The Blumenthals established a flavorings company in Philadelphia. Then it became a candy company, and they invented...
This is why I said she was cool.
Raisinets and goobers.
Yeah, are those right side up?
Yes,
you
you got
lucky
it.
goober.
And so now this is owned by Nestle, but next time you eat these, just know that
Gale's
was my
family.
yes.
Wow. That's
So-
healthy.
The German Jews arrived way ahead of the
That's
Eastern
true.
European Jews.
Okay.
So my father is a Russian Jew. He's from the Ukraine, which was part of Russia. And his family came over in 1914. So they're the ones who came through Ellis Island,
Oh, awesome.
Eastern European Jews. And they were kind of poor cousins for a while to the German Jews who were already established and everything. And my father, his uncle paid for his education, and he became a rocket scientist. So he was a teacher at Johns Hopkins University, and he went to California, and we went for part of a year to work on a project with Applied Physics Laboratory, and then we moved to LA.
Okay.
And my father was, because he was into science big time, just was very non-religious and essentially atheist. So science was our religion at home.
Right.
And yet, you know, we had this Jewish heritage that was very strong. When I turned about 15, I hit that wall that, is this all there is?
Yeah.
And, you know, people sometimes hit that wall when they're in their 50s or when they're
Right.
in their 60s or whatever, but I hit it at 15.
The
And
age
I-
of not believing
That's
from Bedknobs and Broomsticks.
Yes, that's it. There you
Yeah.
go.
The age of I'm just like too smart for all of you.
The age of not believing.
I love
And
that song.
yeah, it was just really interesting because I looked at everything in the world and I just thought this couldn't be it.
And worst of all, you doubt yourself.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Totally.
Quoting
And
Bedknobs and
I
Broomsticks.
developed this emptiness inside of me that was just unquenchable. It could not be filled.
That's
And
terrifying.
it was this yearning for whatever it was that was more than this.
Right.
And it was gnawing at me constantly. Plus, my parents' marriage was on the rocks. My mother had narcissistic personality disorder, which her mother also had, so things were really bad at home.
Yeah, that's really difficult.
So one Sunday, I called my good friend, Marcy, and I asked her to a movie. And she so sweetly explained to me why she couldn't go. And when I hung up, I was so embarrassed because I thought, this is something that I should be born knowing. I should have known from birth that you don't go to movies on Sundays. I really felt that way. I thought,
Gotcha.
this is something that I knew at some time and forgot or something, you know, just...
Right. It just
It
felt
was
so
a really,
familiar.
it was really a strange experience that I hadn't been able to bring up this knowledge that you don't go to movies on Sundays. And that was her foot in the door to invite me to a youth conference.
Oh,
So
nice.
she invited me to a youth conference at the church.
So
and
they
when I
do
had
work.
been,
Oh,
yes,
that's how it always starts with the youth
it
conference.
does work. So, I mean, I had already been church hopping. When I felt this yearning, I thought, okay, it's because of religion. I need religion. I didn't have any religion to write on my emergency card, that you fill out
Yeah.
at school. So I was going with my friends and neighbors to churches, and I enjoyed them all. And I
Right.
was studying everything, enjoyed it all. And so my friend Marcy took me to a youth conference at the church. And I had never, that I knew of, had a spiritual experience. I'd never prayed. I'd never had any kind of a spiritual experience. Even at these churches, which I culturally enjoyed and I liked the atmosphere, I didn't have a spiritual experience. So we went to this youth conference, and it was a number of speakers, LDS speakers, who were fabulous. But we went to the church, and they opened the door and let us in, and I stepped across the threshold, and I had this incredible experience. It was totally like, this is the place that you belong forever. I mean, you don't even want to leave this building. This is where you want to put your bed and your sleeping bag and your kitchen. And,
Whoa.
I mean,
That's the
it
story
was
of how
just
you moved in and you.
yeah. I mean, I had no
The
idea
building we're
where
in
I
right
was.
now.
Yes. I had no idea what church it was. I had no idea
That's crazy.
what they believed. Nothing. I knew nothing. She told me nothing. And I walked across the threshold and had this feeling like, oh my gosh, it's like I'm home. They have all the answers. Whatever it is going to be filled, and this is the place. And so, youth conference was wonderful, and I could not wait to be a part of whatever this was, because I had no idea what it was. So I started cottage meetings, and what those were missionary lessons at someone's home, because we couldn't do them at my house. It was just really a good experience for everybody, but I was golden. We're talking, okay, next lesson, can we do 3 at once? I'm just really golden. And I remember I had sister missionaries. They were both from Utah. They had this cute, weird accent thing, They said things really funny.
Like mountain?
Mountain and picture on the wall, picture on the wall.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never even thought of that one.
Do they do the sister missionary thing where they talk like this?
Yes.
And they go up in their sentences?
Yes,
and
it
they
was
know the
already
church is true? Oh,
it was
my
already
gosh.
in existence
This
so
is
many years ago.
ingrained.
Yeah. So I can remember, we were just moving along because I just could not wait to be part of whatever this
Right.
was. And they got to the Joseph Smith story. And they were just literally shaking, because this is where everybody drops off the cliff, And so finally one of them said, do you think you can believe that Joseph Smith saw Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ? And I said, of course, it's perfectly logical that if people had seen,
Right.
the Father and the Son
In the past.
in the past, that it should happen in the present. It was made perfect sense to me. And I just remember them going, we got through the Joseph Smith story. Anyway, so then I got elder missionaries, and they told me that I needed to pray. And so the first thing was just to pray, not to pray about the Book of Mormon or anything, but just to pray. And I was willing, I had real intent. And to me, real intent is that whatever the Lord says to you, you're willing to act upon. Whatever He tells you to do to change your life, or whatever, you do that. And so I really was fully in it. But I really had no idea what I was doing. And so my first prayer went exactly like this. It went, is there anybody up there? And if there is, will you let me know? And he really let me know. It was incredible. It was so cool. If it's something that brings you closer to Christ, that spiritual thing is going to happen. No matter what church is bringing you closer to Christ, and the Lord is going to answer you if you approach Him with real intent. So I had a wonderful spiritual experience, and all of this is totally new to me. I was just blown away. And then the same thing happened when I asked about the Book of Mormon. And so then, because my family life was so unhappy, I was starting to watch General Conference all by myself. And in those days, well, first of all, I think that move to California was so important because when I joined the church, there were only 1.5 million members.
Wow.
And there were none in the East, essentially.
Wait,
Yeah.
I'm really, really old.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, it's from 16 million.
We have
Like, you-
16 million now.
You've
over
been able to
16 million.
see that. That's so cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
So by-
Gale joins the church?
yeah.
15 million other
Yeah.
people do?
So being in Los Angeles, where there were a lot of active Latter-day Saints, and the cool thing is that then I found out that my dentist and our orthodontist were Latter-day Saints because my parents had gone to a neighbor for recommendations and they were Mormons. And I didn't even know. I didn't even, they were in, I don't know,
That's a very common thing. Like, I went to a Mormon dentist growing up my whole life.
Yeah.
They're from Oregon.
They came to my wedding reception and everything. And I had no idea, but they had gotten these recommendations. Anyway, so then I was watching General Conference, and I promise you that every General Conference in those days, the choir sang Love at Home. And that's, my home life was so awful, and I was so brokenhearted over it, and having so much difficulty with my mother, and I just bawled through that. And I would say, I would tell Heavenly Father, and I'm hoping to keep my composure at this point, that I only wanted two things. I wanted to be numbered with the saints and have a happy family. So those things and so many more have come my way because of being a member of the church. But the next step, of course, was telling my parents. And I know you've had lots of talk about how do I tell my parents.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Listen up, folks.
yeah. My parents were just incredulous, and my father blamed himself for not getting us active in the Jewish community, and that would have filled my desires.
He would have rather had you been a Jew than
Oh,
Mormon,
sure,
even
yeah.
though he was more of an atheist himself.
Oh, absolutely, because that's our tradition, and
Yeah.
Right.
and Jews have given so much for their faith that you really become a turncoat when you abandon it. And at that time, there wasn't a lot to know about the Mormon Church because it was so small. My parents didn't know a lot, and they did not approve. But even at that time, the rule was that if it causes conflict in the home, they will not baptize you till you're 18. This is not a new thing.
Yeah. Right.
So the elders said, we will not baptize you. If your parents are against it, we will not baptize you. You have to be 18. So, there was this back and forth with my parents, and the nice thing was that I was dating a boy in the ward.
Ooh.
And we really liked each other. And so my parents got into a discussion, and they went, well, Gale likes this boy in the ward. So when she breaks up with the boy, she'll break up with the church.
Right.
New boy,
Right.
new church.
That's the reason.
So then she'll
you were
meet a
there.
Pentecostal boy, and she'll meet an Episcopalian boy, and maybe in the end she'll meet a nice Jewish boy.
So
and
just
then
a game of
problems
waiting.
are over, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just go through all these boys and see where she ends up in her faith.
So I'm going to assume that didn't work.
No. And so they thought it was just a temporary thing and it would pass.
The
So
religion.
The
Not
whole
boy,
religion.
not the
Well, they
boys.
figured the boy would pass too. I wasn't even
sure.
16.
Yeah.
I was baptized just a couple months after I turned 16. So, and then the moral code is so good, and that turns a lot of parents toward you
true.
when they know, they're going to teach you not to smoke and drink, even though my mother smoked and both my parents drank. And the Mormon kids were so great.
Right.
They were
That always
leaders in
makes
the
a huge
schools.
difference.
They were just such amazing people. So they let me join the church, but the difficulty when your parents are not really supportive of you is that, first of all, you don't learn the way a person who has a home life that's LDS learns. So you learn things really slowly. I didn't even really learn about temple garments until I had been in the church for about 4 years.
Wow.
No one told me,
Right. You don't know it until it's mentioned at church. Or
it wasn't in the missionary lessons.
No
and
Google back
I just
then.
didn't know. No Google.
Right.
No Google.
Probably for the better.
So they kept me from a number of activities because they were jealous of that time and didn't want me to become really,
interesting.
really committed. So I never could fully engage during those 2 years. Then it came time for me to go to college, and I wanted to go to BYU. They did not want me going to a college where there was just lots of Mormons.
It was that boy thing again.
It was the boy thing again.
You want me to nice Jewish
And
boy in
I
Provo?
had, I had the relationship with this boy that I had liked in the church was over, and I was still a member.
Right.
Now I was ready to go to college, and they didn't want me to, they wanted me to end up with a Jewish boy, not a Mormon boy, so they wouldn't let me go to BYU. So they had me go to a school that was part of the California college system, and I won't name it, but it has been named one of the top 5 party schools every year.
Oh, UCLA.
No, it was UC Santa Barbara, which is a wild, wild place. It's a wild, wild place. And it was wild, wild. And at that time, the 60s were just crazy wild. LSD and marijuana and weed and
Marijuana and weed?
no, one of the others. People don't know both terms,
Right. Just in case.
Yes, just in case they didn't get one.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. They said that if I didn't like it after a year, and they knew I loved the beach, so that's one reason I was there, but if I didn't like it after a year, I could transfer. And so that was a tough year. And one of the reasons it was tough is that I was dating guys that everybody wanted to date. They were student body officers
Popular.
And by the way,
and captains of the football team, which is not much to say at Santa Barbara.
I was gonna say.
Anyway, so these guys would get drunk, and I really learned not to hate people drinking. Oh my gosh.
That's the worst.
Yes. I really learned about that. But these guys, these important older guys, would get drunk, and they just fall apart in front of me. I was 18. I'd been in school a month or so, I was a member of the church for 2 years and knew not very much. And they would just kind of collapse and say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to believe. I don't know what to do with my life. I can't make moral decisions. I'm confused. And they lay it all on me because I had this framework that guided my life, and so I was calm. And one thing that I see on college campuses is this nervousness, this tremulousness. Is that a word? Is
now.
it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't
Sounds
know.
good.
Yeah.
Just like that German word you
Because
made.
you're making your decisions moment by
Dauerschleife.
moment.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing. You don't have anything in place where you're thinking, is this moral or is it not? But I feel this way and I'd like to do that, but what? And then afterwards you're rehashing it and wondering if you should have done it. I didn't have any of that because I believed in the gospel and it gave me these solid guidelines that at the basic I had that.
Right.
So something really momentous did happen at Santa Barbara. The day before school started, I met my husband.
And was he a Jew?
Do we get me? No, he was a Mormon.
Oh,
I bet your parents loved
dang
that.
it.
And I was at this dance, and I was with a date, and so my date, Rick, I said, do you know any Mormons? Because I have to meet some Mormons. And he said, yeah, I roomed with a guy for a while, and he's a Mormon, and he's been around, but he's really straight arrow. That's exactly what he said.
That's awesome.
And he said, and he's here at the dance. I'll introduce you. And as we walked across the floor, I knew. I was 18, I just knew this is it. This is it. And we walked towards them, and he couldn't dance. He was not dancing well.
That sounds
Game
about
over.
right.
We've been married
learn how to
50 years,
dance,
and it
guys.
turned out okay. So I met him there, and then he went on a 30-month mission. That's how long we were.
Wow.
30 months
Wow.
foreign mission. And I told my parents that I wanted to transfer. and they reneged on their promise. And so I failed to re-register. I applied to BYU, got accepted, and then I announced to them that
You were going.
either they could pay or not. I ended up with roommates my junior year who were amazing. And we're not those roommates where everybody has their food in the fridge and you just grab your own thing, you label it and all that. We had all of these chores and cooking and all these things all worked out. And we set up a Mormon family in that apartment. And that's how I learned about the church and how it worked in the home, was from my BYU
really cool.
roommates. And I mean, really, I owe so much to them because that support and that in-home learning and how things work in the home was just the only basis I had for becoming a Mormon mom.
Right.
And trying to have family home evenings and things like this. It was basic training, but it really helped.
That's awesome.
Great, yeah.
Well, Gale, thank you so much for coming. This is so much fun.
Your
Your
story is.
missionaries loved you.
Yeah.
They loved me. They couldn't
Seriously.
believe it, really. They couldn't believe it. Yeah,
That's
I was
so
more than
fun.
golden. So be sure to subscribe to Three Mormons on YouTube.
Yes. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so follow us on those things.
And like. And comment.
And share this video with all your Jewish friends. Should we say that?
Transcribe it, print it out, put it on your fridge.
In Yiddish.
Do all the things.
In Yiddish.
And have a great Passover. Well, the Passover.
It's over,
by the
over.
time they-
Shalom.
Oh,
Passover's over.
Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah. I know my stuff from elementary school, and they taught me.
I don't know.
In fact, actually, in elementary school, there was a day where we all made dreidels.
Yeah,
That's
Made
awesome.
them
Yeah,
in
that's
elementary school in
for
Rockville,
Hanukkah.
Maryland.
I've never
For
actually
Hanukkah,
played
yeah.
like the dreidel.
Yes, gambling.
So
Game.
cool.
Yeah,
Is it?
That's why I never have.